So I'm Matt Klos. I've been teaching for really 20 years at Anne Arundel Community College. Teach drawing and painting. I first met Phil. I was describing to a couple friends this morning over breakfast. I first met Phil in kind of putting together an exhibition, Lineage of American Perceptual Painters, at the Mitchell Gallery at St. John's College. And the way that it came about, I was sort of, I became chair at the time at the college where I was teaching. And you know, if anyone's ever served as chair of the department, it's, you know, what that means is everybody comes and they sit on you with their problems. So it was the worst experience of my life. And as I was enduring this experience, you know, and just taking like a family trip, my wife and I were just talking about just my depression and how to get over it. You know? And she was like, if you could do anything you want, you know, what would it be? And where I taught in just outside of Annapolis, there was a huge following of these sort of Henry Henchy acolytes. This, you know, great painter that kind of harkened back through Edwin Dickinson, this sort of perceptual-based painter, really Hawthorne, you know, big shapes, 10 to 12 big distinct shapes. But these followers of Henchy, you know, several layers down from these great masters, there was a very dogmatic sort of approach. And I would have these students in class, and I might show like an Eve Mansdorf painting, and they'd be like, what? Why would you even show that? You know, because there was a certain dogmatic way in terms of painting. So at this time, I'm sort of thinking about these things, and I was like, you know, I would just love to do a show in this area that showed all of these great painters and how they sort of relate, kind of where they came from, the water that they were drinking, the well that they were all drinking out of. So I rattled off these names, and it just sort of sat there. And fast forward about 6 or 7 months, I was having lunch with one of our art history professors who happened to be sort of the co-director of the Mitchell Gallery. And she was like, you know, that sounds like that could be a cool show. And hey, we have a $40,000 budget. You know, and it just became a thing. So I put together this great show. I remember first sort of getting the green light to put this together. I called Scott Noel and said, hey, what do you think? And of course, Scott, the moment you tell Scott, then I was sort of married to the idea. I was like, all right, gotta see it through. But through that, I met Liz, I met Phil. They were both part of this exhibition. And after that show, which was really, you know, one of the best moments of my life to sort of be around these great painters and learn from them and meet some of these heroes of mine, I really formed a friendship with the Geigers, and they had recently moved from Charlottesville to Stanton. And I would just go down this huge house, which, you know, really the rooms that were lived in were like kind of the kitchen, and you know, the bedroom. The whole house was like a still life. It was a stage set for paintings and a stage set for these different ideas. It was all, you know, so the table would be set, but no one was going to eat at that table. You know, that was just something. You know, so I would just go and, you know, very graciously, thank you, Liz, you know, opened up the house, and I could go. I'd paint in the mornings with Phil. We'd hire a model or Martin. Sometimes other friends would join us. I think Dave Campbell was down once. Brian Rago, Kristen, I think lots of Ed, you know, lots of folks went down. And it just became this incredible sort of selah from like regular life, you know, to go down for a few days, not have kids, not have work, and just paint. So yeah, and through those years, I got to know Phil a little bit. And now, you know, I want to segue into Phil. Phil, you know, obviously you're seeing an incredible long stretch of time, you know, as you look at these paintings. And, you know, to me, there are really three main movements of Phil's work, you know, the early, the mid, and the late. I really knew Phil, got to know Phil during the latest paintings. So we're gonna, in a few minutes, we'll sort of stop and get up and go look around at some work. I did print this out for all of you. I wasn't sure how many people would come today. But on one of the days that I was working, we'll kind of just pass these through. Yeah. And I'll do It's front and back, but this is, there was a day, this was maybe, I guess it's 2017, I believe. So there's a day that I came down, and when I would go to work at the Geiger's house, I would just, for me it was a sprint. I'd bring a bunch of panels, and I'd work early, I'd go out in the afternoon and paint, and then at night I'd be, I was younger then, so I still had a little energy, and I'd do a nocturne or two. But one morning I got up, this was maybe day 3 or day 4, where it was sort of catching up with me. I was like, oh man, 8 a.m., I'm like barely crawling out of bed. And I came down and I saw Phil. Phil's very sprightly. If you know Phil, he's like, he's like a startled bird. I saw him. Here it is. I'm barely out of bed, and he saw something. He was excited about it. Had his panel set up. He had just started stabbing it. He kind of stabs. He just gets in there, bam, 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 bam. Starts laying paint in on these panels, so they sort of rattle on the easel. And I was like, I'm just gonna watch. I keep doing. I made 3 or 4 really poor paintings the day before, and I'm like, I'm just gonna watch the master. So I watched Phil, sat down, and just sort of wrote down what I saw. So I'm just gonna read it. Because there might be little bits in here that don't make sense, and you could ask about it. So watching Phil work, so this is June 1st, 2017. Let's see, it started on a light beige tone panel using a mid-sized bristle brush. He scumbled subtle tones across the surface, holds brush perpendicular to the surface of the panel, jabbing at the painting with rapid but controlled marks, making patches of color. He would make the largest scumble, perhaps 1.5 inches by 1.5, on a 16 by 22 surface, alternating with careful linear stroke or two. In this way, he seemed to slowly digest the scene by winnowing into the drawing and finding the color notes in the big shape structures. Perhaps 45 minutes into the painting, he squeezed 4 piles of white in the center of the palette, and mixing light creamy tones, he began to build the light, flooded tabletop in the center of the composition. He chose a new brush for this. The table and the chairs in the center of the composition are fragmented into primarily 2 tones, a darker green gold and the creamy white. The contrast is stark, although the chairs and table aren't clearly delineated. At this stage, only by squinting does the image read as illusion of table, chair, light, space. He wipes the 2 brushes he is using on paper towels, 1 brush for light and 1 for dark. Mixing a value 4, and by value 4 I just mean sort of like a lighter middle value. I'm thinking of like a 0 being white, 10 being black. Let's see. Mixing a value 4 camel tone, he scumbles over a large section of floor. Extra scumbles here to cover, and then only one pass to allow the light rows previously scumbled in another passage to show through. Developing the floor more now, bringing in lighter ochre passages and slightly raspberry ochres. Scumbled shapes are always left with a trembling edge. Soft edges prevail. The painting is developing very openly with the occasional pinning down of information with a punctuating dark or light mark. A wooden slat making up an easel in the foreground, a hanging iron light, the dark rim around a circular mirror above the fireplace, a shaft of light falling on the floor between chair legs. Perhaps 9 colors are on his palette, clustered in the lower quarter of the palette, with white across the middle. I have a little illustration of his palette. Shadow in light blue, table leg is painted dark olive color, then lightened with rose to mid-value. Colors are kept close, a knit-together color structure. A clear form for the mantle is present, but none of the 7 distinct objects which occupy it are present in the painting at this point. Watching someone paint is like watching someone play a new form of chess. You know what each piece does and what it is capable of, but you don't yet know the aim or end goal of the game you are watching. About an hour in, Phil used a palette knife to lay in some intense blue whites out the window, thick pads of paint. Then he jumped up to take a break. That's when I did the little illustration of his palette. But the thing that really struck me, and I'd like to look at a couple paintings. The thing that really struck me in watching him paint when I think of Phil's work, I think of sort of his supremely singing and poetic color. He just has this way of sort of skim coating like a violet, on a space and shadow. That's such a ringing intonation of color, yet it still adheres in a certain fidelity to sort of that wall. But I was sort of surprised in that hour and a half that these crescendos of color, he sort of starts in, he holds everything in to these incredible, hey Annie, to these incredible simplicities, and then sings out, which is a very interesting approach. Talk about that chess game. I sort of come at painting in a different way. I'll start sort of jumpier, and then I'll try to find a gestalt or a logic. Things will, mix down. So it was so exciting to watch the master work. Okay, so any questions so far about any of this? We're gonna look at some stuff.
What year was the show in Annapolis that you?
That's a great question.
About.
I think it was 2007, and I should remember.
Yeah. Around
Is
that.
that too early?
Yeah.
2011?
Yeah.
2011. Thank you. Yeah, I think it was probably
Okay.
2011.
I have a question though. It's called, excuse me, I was told by Scott that he did not use ochre. And I've been over there trying to copy a couple of things. And look, and I am convinced he must have had ochre, so you just confirmed it.
Well, I think, so ochre is a color that can, I work pretty closely with Erin Radeke, and she uses these very, I would call chromatically bullish palettes. And, ochre is a color that is very easily mixable by a much more chromatic combination. So just because so when I'm saying ochre, sorry, it's not actually ochre on a palette, yellow ochre on a palette. It's a mixture that looks like yellow ochre.
Do you know?
So we could ask Liz and Martin actually, and they would tell us.
That's what he said, he mixed the earth tones.
Yeah. He's mixing down to those earth tones. Yeah. And you're actually sitting to one of the, I think of the best colorists on the planet right now. So we can just ask John. John will get down there like, well, you can do this or do that. We'll find yellow ochre a lot of ways. But yeah, no, it's good. So ochre in here is not like ochre from the tube. It's that mixed ochre. Which actually I realize now, I need to keep a better journal. I don't have any of his palette. I don't even know what was on his palette. This is terrible. But any other ideas so far popping up? Cool. All right. Well, let's take a look at some work. So I guess the main thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is a little self-aggrandizing, which, if you know me at all, it's something I do occasionally, but I have, rarely, but I have a show in town at Stephen Francis Fine Art Gallery, hey Stephen, that I'm very excited about. It's a show of interior paintings, even though I did a lot of paintings when I was in Stanton, this show really focuses on those interiors.
And it opens today.
It actually, we find that it opens
Everyone's
today.
invited from 2 to 5.
Yeah, come on out. We might have wine, boxed wine. I don't know what we have. But it'll be good. Yeah, so please come. And the thing that I want to talk about is, when you look at Phil's work, I've been teaching really beginning students for a number of years. Freshman, sophomore level students that are quite capable. But to build these paintings that we're looking at, these interiors, you really are sort of building two paintings. It's a plan that has to inhabit multiple spaces. So I'm going to talk, I'll talk about this one. I mean, you can talk about any room. This is a good one to sort of a light on for this little bit. Because I want to talk about sort of the painting as a plan. To make an interior, an interior-exterior light work, it really is sort of a plan, right? So when Phil's approaching this, when you look at this figure, which this is a brilliant painting for a lot of reasons, but that sort of dark mahogany wood, right behind the profile of the face. I mean, that's the painting. You know, this idea is just brilliant and beautiful, you know, and it becomes the fulcrum for the whole entire painting. But as he's building this, you know, so the plan might be, if I'm using this idea, that everything in the foreground is sort of warm, you know, orangey, rose, you know. It's not that you don't have cool notes, right? So all of these ideas are sort of maybe parenthetical, but the underlying theme is that it's warm and it's light. So if you look even at the shadows in these spaces, right? And this is where the beginning painter struggles. It's like, well, look at how dark that shadow is, right? The A-B comparison, right, tells you that that's supremely dark. But then you look C, right? You know, so if you go beyond the parenthesis of a space and see it holistically, you start to recognize, and this is really hierarchy. You know, you have to be a painter, and this is why I really do believe Phil is, you know, one of the masters of our time. You know, he's able to sort of hold multiple ideas of space and make them work in a logical way while spinning out a much more complex narrative. So you'll actually see in some of these paintings, like this large one in the center wall here, where it's like, you know, really the idea, if we're going with like the painting is a plan, right? The painting is sort of a thesis. It's like the idea, and then these ideas, which are also different. So each of there is actually, I think, 5 different theses or ideas within the painting in terms of high key, low key, full range, chromatic intensities, and it's really quite beautiful to see. One of the other great masters that was here just a couple months ago, I'm sorry I missed his talk, Scott Noel. You can actually see his pastel on the wall. Of course, they were really close friends and sort of traded off paintings over the years. But yeah, let me go back to this one real quick and see if we can digest this a little more. And I was looking at this, one of the things that I would want to say about this idea is that within this high key note of that window, to make it operate as sort of a field of light beyond the space, it's really about sort of keeping it kosher. Like no matter how light these other things get, they don't, you know, kind of topple the hierarchy of that. And I'm looking at this right here, this light kind of blue bloom on that wall. I think it is fractionally darker than what's out in this space, but man, it is so close. So there are times that the drawing, you know, what it is, right? Seeing this sort of darker frame, you know this is inside and outside, and that carries it. But my argument is that quite often when you look at great painters, the drawing be damned. You know, the space exists beyond, you know, through the color spots. And that's one of the things that Phil's really, really great at. Look at the difference between light and dark on that arm. Right, what is it? What is the difference? This is, all right, now you're gonna tell me. What's the difference in terms of lightness and darkness across this upper bicep to the tricep? I'm wrestling. I'm trying to get it. What do you think?
It looks like you had some of that like cerulean blue that's on the wall into the arm there.
Well, there is that, right? So we've got reflected light. This is rather cool. Sure, but that's a color. That's a color. I'm talking just value. What is the light dark spread? Look at that orange, that like sort of, you know, and then this sort of violet right next to it.
I bet you he had the light on because over the table. Because look at the top of her head. Her arm is getting hit with warm.
So she's being illuminated by this warm light right over the dining room table.
So it's like he liked doing that. Hot and cold, like interior light and window.
And she's being flooded by this cool light from a window like that's here.
Right.
What happens to that light-dark movement? What I would say is the light-dark movement is barely existing. You know, like this is just a hair's breadth lighter than that. You know, so the movement of light is really one that's sort of hinged upon kind of, in this sense, color. You know, it's about this warm, cool relationship. And what I love about this is that all of these things up here absolutely are, even though you have lights back here, there are other moments that exist, it's not just the lightness, it's the warmth that projects this here. And then back here, it's about that sort of cool realm. And then out here, it's both cool and warm in a very, very high register. So I think for Phil, as he's working on these paintings, and he absolutely does, Aaron was pointing out, Aaron Thompson's here somehow. Where is he? Where is he? There he is. He was pointing out that one of the cool things about seeing Phil's work is that there are times that he's like, I know that studio. Out that window, that is not what you'd see. You know, he took this bridge abutment from the other side of town and put it out that window. So Phil has this way of kind of building the structure, the sequence of the spaces, but then that allows him a lot of play to kind of like riff or like put this in or add this in or move this around. There's a painting back here that I think is really particularly tender. It shows, you know, I've got a lot of kids at home, so I get a little... think about, holding your baby. You know, I have a son who's now 18. He picks me up and moves me around. I used to hold him, and I love this little painting. But this idea of like sort of the movement here, just compositionally, and then this red glow on the floor, that crazy Technicolor picture on the wall. Maybe that was there, maybe not. It's needed compositionally, and I think you see that in a lot of Phil's work, this sort of play. There's another painting I was looking at earlier today. I'm not going to find it now, but there was a sort of a red something just behind this sort of glass cake holder, just absolutely perfectly played in the composition, right? So he's playing, where is it? That's not it. That's not it. Where is it? Oh yeah, right here. Right, we need that. Right? It's so necessary. Now that may have been, the cool thing about the Geiger's house when I would go, it was a stage set. Things would move around and there was that play. But I think it's also within the powers of the painter, especially a great master of sort of constructing these spaces, that will just say, yeah, I need that, moving things freely. But yeah, this is a knockout. Okay, so let's go back here. We can all fit. Yeah, be careful, because in small spaces, my voice really projects. Watch out. Yeah, cover those ears. Hearing loss is a blessing. So I want to look at this one first, and then we'll look at that one on the far end. There's plenty of room. It's getting warm actually, so you don't need to have your coat on. Okay, pack it in. And there's a lot to see back here. The nice thing about this room, hats off to the director and curator, who's somewhere around. Just beautiful. I heard that it was at least 10, probably 15 hours just to hang this thing, just to stage it. And I think it's beautifully done. This room in particular, it's really nice to see 30, 40 years maybe of painting the figure. It's really cool to see the shifts in his work. This is the painting that I really want to look at first. I guess in this painting, the thing that excites me is, again, it's this idea of sort of just these very simple kind of warm, cool color contrast, the beauty of that. But really, ultimately, it's the hierarchy of light. It's sort of the tiptoeing the razor's edge to make a light-flooded figure actually come to life. The idea that these lights down here, these sing-songy kind of lighter moments on the lower legs and the hips, they're secondary to this fulcrum of light right on the shoulder. We're pulled right in. That sort of the drama of the lightning then draws us into sort of this very tender portrait, the gaze of the model. So much of the activity builds to this. And then, and then we're pulled out, and then we can kind of enjoy that experience once again. So I think, really Phil is, even in the simpler, I mean, this is not a simple painting, but right, but even in the faster, simpler studies, he's very aware that you can't see anything, you know, parenthetical. It's not enough to ask how light or how dark. You must ask, it's not enough to ask, is it lighter or darker? You've really got to think about, okay, how much lighter and darker? And the same is true in color. Like, hey, is it orange? To what degree? You know, and all of the other oranges fall sort of within this sort of scattered set. The other painting I wanted to look at in here is one that was always hanging in the bedroom where I would stay when I would visit the Geigers. It's a real favorite of mine, Naomi sitting. And I think probably, what is this dated? 2016. Okay, that's about right. So probably in the last 10 or 15 years, I think, as tonal as some of his work can be, you know, some of these earlier paintings that are much more, they seem very like earth palette. Maybe they weren't earth palette, maybe they were, I don't know. But his color became far more exuberant, you know, this is like a technicolor shoulder, right? Red, yellow, blue, green, you know, you see it all. And it's this incredible sort of, I think, expressive response to what he's seeing, but it still holds on to a certain fidelity of the light, the space, the model. You know, likeness is kind of a dirty word in some of the painting circles that I inhabit, but likeness, you know, he's getting kind of all of it. Another thing that I think is really beautiful about Phil, and I think that in the greatest painters, you see it like Sorolla. You know, you see it in these painters that have what I would call chops. If you've ever seen Sorolla, you know, there's the Sorolla paintings that are like the big deal Sorolla paintings that are in the museums. Yeah, you know, that are kind of like the worked out thing. They're incredible, right? But if you've ever seen the paintings that he does along the Spanish seaside, not with the figures necessarily, even smaller, where he's far away and looking out at the rocks, and the little figures that are sort of jumping in and out of the waves, and, you know, like little people kind of like wearing bathing suits on distant. There's a certain level of like, he is just in awe of the experience, and he's fighting for his life to show something of meaning in all of it. He wants it all. Those are his best paintings. And I think there are times with Phil where he really is sort of painting in and working around and enamored by these things, but he's sort of always going for it. I don't think it was ever like, it's pretty sure I'm gonna get there, let me button it up. I feel like he was always out in front of what he was trying to do, and that's a recipe for a crash and burn, right? I think there are a lot of stillborn paintings. But gosh, when he really gets it, it's so rewarding. Here's a little moment. I think there's like a magazine or something here on that stool. You know, and of course he's showing it not by showing that little magazine, but stopping the back rail of that table just in time, pulling that little shadow up. You know, he's always sort of drawing and painting almost in unison. This is actually this is a good painting to look at in context of that question. It's really hard. So I think there are times, you know, I tend to tell students, and maybe this is a bit morbid, but I'm like, imagine you go out to use the restroom and you die. You know, you never get back to it. You know, what's the next thing you need to do? You know what I'm saying? It's the drop dead school of painting. You know, like what does the painting need at this moment? You know, and I think there's part of that. But the thing about Phil, I think he really was like a, you know, he knew the lifespan of a painting so well that I think occasionally, like a painting like this, you know, and I would probably make the mistake of, if this was a student, I'd be like, well, give us a little more, you know,
Right,
like,
right.
you spent a lot of time on that, hey, give us a little more back then. But I think Phil was, you know, he sort of knew, like, all right, let me just lock this in. Let this be about a head that you can look at and sort of complete the painting through your peripheral vision. You know, and so, like, in other words, this is sort of enough. You know, so maybe he started the whole painting this way, spent 2 hours to 2.5 hours to lock that in, and did 1-2 light touches, 1 black touch, and was done. You know what I'm saying? And he had the wherewithal and sort of what I would call the posture of making piles of paintings to do that.
Do you think it's more about resolving the idea rather than finishing the idea?
Well, I like that way of saying
Sort
it.
of lands at a resolution based on what he's trying to convey without a level of finish.
That seems right to me.
Make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's knowing when to do that,
Yeah.
that's so hard.
Yeah, I think that's right. Oh, man. Okay. All right, you ready for one more? You ready for one more? This is great. We're in it. Yeah, so again, all right, so you're gonna share a little bit with me about, what's the logic of the painting? If there are 2 main ideas to the painting, what are they? And there's probably, there's a lot, we're like building 2 columns. The whole painting is a dichotomy. It's about these 2 core areas or groupings. So let's just describe it. What do you think? There's like no wrong answer. Yeah, I won't yell at you. You're the public. If you take a class, then I'll scold you. But we're safe here. We're safe. What do you think?
The lamplight in the foreground left, and then the cooler outdoor light in the back.
Oh, okay. So like warmer, cooler. Yeah. Can we go as far as to name hue? I mean, it starts with warm, cool, and then it kind of slowly. Richard Grazeless, if you're not aware of Richard Grazeless's paintings, he is been a long time faculty member at BU. He shows at Gallery Naga, the same place that George Nick shows. Terrific painter, and he was interviewed a while ago on painting perceptions. And he wrote this beautiful paragraph about color. And essentially he was like, yeah, when I start a painting, the color can be almost anything. Like warm, cool. Warm can be, or you can find a green that's kind of warm. You can find yellows, oranges, right? And then he goes on in the same paragraph at the end and he says, as you move forward, and approach the end, the color can be only one thing. And that's what I love about more complicated paintings, what I would call complex paintings, this being one of them. Yeah, the core idea is this idea of warm, cool. It's this idea of, maybe more dramatic, light, dark against sort of dark. And as we winnow into those spaces, look at all the variety in the cool. We have these sort of green golds, these rosy grays, these more blue hues, these sort of violet, blue reds. And we get very, very specific. Look at that light on the wall, the glow within the interior on the wall. But even that is secondary to that, the penultimate experience of that light space beyond. So again, it is sort of this, you start with these kind of core glacial ideas. And then as you pick into them, don't lose that idea. Or, I think in Phil's case, sometimes you'll see he's into a work and he might create an audible. Well, now it's about this now. The light has changed. And that's one of the beautiful things I think about kind of working directly in front of the motif is you actually see the life of this thing sift and shift beneath your eyes. And you go, maybe the better idea is this one, the other thing that I think is interesting here that really struck me when I was watching Phil paint is that this red chair, look at how kind of green it is. The idea that naming things is typically a fatal flaw in the act of painting it well. It's not a red chair. It's a red chair in this sort of cool greenish space that is both red and green. Yeah.
So how much care did he take to get with all these, get angles right and in the, because it all looks so loose, but it's so hard to do doorways and.
It is. I mean, this sort of thing, I mean, you see this in a lot of contemporary artists' work. I mean, it's something that seems true to me. I'm thinking of Peter Van Dyck, Gideon Bach, Carolyn Pyfrom, these sort of artists that are, the drawing, there's a little bit of the bending, but this actually is birthed of a very keen awareness of sort of perspective and what I would call empirical, looking and sort of measuring. I don't think in a you and you glow measuring way, but a sense of, this is a horizontal when seen here, and then when I'm looking out at a 45-degree angle, this is bowing toward that distant horizon. So I think a lot of his drawing is actually a byproduct of years of work. I don't know how much it's sort of front in mind as he's working. Yeah, right, and that's the nice thing about really kind of developing as an artist. Some of these complex things start to go into the background as you're working. But I think he's, a master draftsman.
I really like how he animates the empty spaces. I find that is so hard to do. You've got this empty space. And how are you gonna make it not look flat? It's
Like this here, right?
Above the chair. And the
And
chair actually
this,
looks like a
yeah.
portrait of a chair. It's almost like a nod to Van Gogh
Yeah,
there. And it's kind of a counter juxtaposition to this woman in the front. Two portraits.
yeah, it's really beautiful. And that's maybe one other thing that I wanted to share with the group today is this idea that when you're in a space, this is very connected. It's like a plane, it's a form. But within it, I think to articulate it well, and what he does everywhere, let's look at this yellow wall, right? Everything within this plane, even in this core of the plane, like this is different than this. This is actually red, this is green. These are both about the same level of middle value. And then as you move up, right, it gets lighter, it's more yellow. As you move up, the yellow is actually skewing violet, and then it's skewing maybe green, orange again. So everything within this set, once you name the set, this is Hawthorne, right? Once you name the set, you can just create variations on the theme endlessly. Phil's looking to sort of nature, the sift of light, what nature's doing in that. But he'll look across, if you try to look from here to here to here to here, you almost don't see it. You just won't see it. But if you look here to here, here to here, then you begin to see it. So find the
There's a sense
ABCs.
of movement and animation that happens there. There's a
Absolutely.
bit of vibration that you're aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. But really beautiful work. So thank you for being with me today as we look around Phil's work, and I'll take more questions if you have them. Otherwise, I hope you come out at 2 today. Let's party. Stephen's gonna be there.